Jim, the Bucks are 12-5. They're third in the Eastern Conference standings. Their numbers are pretty good, especially on offense. Maybe not defensively as much, but I have trouble explaining to my family why I'm so worried about a team that's won 6 of 7 games. I think it's because they've had to work so hard. Their schedule has not been tough, and they've had to really work to beat some of these teams. And that's not going to stay that way forever. So, like, is it just crazy that I still feel like this team is not looking like a championship contender really in any way, shape, or form? Is that just something I shouldn't be preoccupied with because there's still so much growth to go? How do you explain the Milwaukee Bucks?
Yeah, it's I mean, yes, the baseline wins and losses obviously in their favor. And we could say that's a talent. The fact that Giannis and Dame have been healthy for the most part. Chris Middleton, this Achilles tendonitis, I think, is definitely worth watching. It appeared he was about to bust sort of out of this minutes restriction, and when he played 28 in Boston, and then there's a sort of setback here. Yeah, JR, I don't know. You're right. Like they're winning. They're better than some of these teams, and yet it doesn't look great, right? So I don't know how to explain it. I think it's worth. You're right. I don't know if this current Bucks, you plop them in the playoffs and they win 4 rounds. It doesn't feel that way. Defensively, they just are not very good right now. And yet in certain instances, they can get some stops. A 26-point comeback against Portland. On one hand, JR, they only allowed 34 points in the second half, which is amazing. But yet they also allowed 37 points in the second quarter, which is terrible. So, and the fact that everyone from Adrian Griffin on down seems to be searching for why such things happen, and no one can put their finger on it. Offensively, they have, I believe, like the 3rd or 4th best scoring offense in the league. Their shooting numbers are sort of coming back to, I guess, variance levels after being so bad early. And yet, when you watch the game, there's a herky-jerkiness still in the offense. What exactly are they doing? What do they do well? So yeah, it's really weird, JR. They are 12-5. They have played a pretty easy schedule. I mean, we'll look back and say, hey, they beat the teams they should beat, i.e. Washington, Chicago, Portland. But it doesn't. There's not a ton of confidence in there. So yeah, it is. It's really interesting. But I guess the good part is they are winning the games and allowing themselves more time to figure this out, as opposed to being 500 and sort of maybe people hitting the panic button.
How would you evaluate Giannis specifically to this point? I mean, on the one hand, the production is always there in some capacity. It's kind of hard to always be critical of him. But what has he been saying about sort of how he's adjusted and specifically with Damian Lillard being on the floor, but just where is it fair to say there might be areas where Giannis still needs to do some adjustment to get this team back to where it can be a championship caliber squad?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely several things happening here. So there's the adjustment with Dame, and obviously that's going to always be in the spotlight, right, until that whole thing, and meaning the offense looks fantastic. In terms of Giannis's raw numbers, he's back to shooting almost 60% from the field. He's kind of cut back on some threes. Free throw percentage as a whole is bad, but he's had some better games. Points per game are there. But it's more than that, right? It's the fact that after the game against Dallas, he admits, I'm not really used to not having the ball in my hands for several minutes at a time, while Damian Lillard does his thing. And then after the game against Portland, he's like, well, Dame should have the ball in his hands late in the game. It's taken me time to adjust to that. And, he mentions the other way where Damian has gotten outlets after defensive rebounds and typically kind of uses his own pace to get up the floor, whereas Giannis is like, hey, between the 3-point lines, I need to get out and run. That's a good thing. And so, Dame is allowing that to happen, so to speak. So I think that's a continued work in progress. Their pick and roll, again, also still a work in progress. Like Giannis is getting the ball much higher than, if it's a crisp pick and roll, that's a lob, right, JR? How many times have we seen that? It's a lob dunk, right? Dame pick and roll, Giannis is getting the ball around the free throw line, and that's not a spot where he's used to getting it. And so you still see some hesitation of what to do. And where everyone else is, right, in response to that. So, yeah, there's some adjustment there. Defensively, they're doing different stuff. It's not just Brook Lopez kind of cleaning up everyone's issues, if you will. On one hand, look, Portland game, Brook is out on Malcolm Brogdon at the three-point line, one-on-one. Makes him work really hard, but invariably Malcolm Brogdon gets a step on Brook, drive to the lane. Well, guess what? There's Giannis. And it's a shot clock violation. That type of rotation hasn't always happened. Giannis has been used to Brook just clearing space. And this is even on the defensive rebounding end, JR. Giannis's defensive rebounds are down almost twofold to this point. And part of that is in the old defense, Brook clears out all the space. Giannis takes this really nice, easy defensive rebound, doesn't have to work real hard at it, and then goes. Well, in this current scheme, there's traffic in there. And so it hasn't been as clean for Giannis to defensive rebound and get out and run. So, yeah, there's still a lot of a work in progress here on like a lot of fronts. We're not even getting into the broader team breakdowns on defense still. So, but yeah, Giannis specifically, there's definitely a continuing evolution of where this is going. And, he's, in terms of the commitment to it and the buy-in to it, it feels like that's still there. It's just how long does it take for this all to coalesce? And they can say, Giannis has said, right, at the end of last preseason game, Giannis, JR, well, it could take 20 games, 40 games, 60 games. It's easy to say that when you're living it. Are you okay with that and having that patience? And I think we're all still watching to see, how long these guys are okay with these odd sort of ups and downs in games, but maybe because they're winning, JR, it's allowing them to kind of string that out and be patient.